Welcome to part one of the Bowling for Soup Discography Tour. If you haven't joined us before, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how we do things just so you know what to expect and you know what to look forward to. Part one is always dedicated to band history, the roots of the band, the path that leads them to initially forming, and the road leading up to the release of their first album. Then in subsequent episodes, we take one studio album per week and give a bit of history surrounding that album and touch base on each song from a small commentary to full thoughts on the meaning of the lyrics behind the song. This discography tour is going to be especially fun for me because Bowling for Soup has been in my top 5 bands for the last 20 years. And the name of the channel, Critically Disdained, is actually taken directly from their song of the same name from their album Lunch Drunk Love. And at one point during the tour, we will actually get the immense pleasure of being able to interview Jaret Reddick, the lead singer and co-founder of the band itself. So let's get into it, and first of all, let's address the elephant in the room, the name of the band, Bowling for Soup. Where in the world did it come from? Well, it actually was not originally Bowling for Soup. Before it was Bowling for Soup, they took from a Steve Martin comedy bit, and their name of their band was Bowling for Shit.
I will be on TV, some shows to promote it if you want to watch. I don't think it this year, Bowling for Shit.
But as fate would have it, their first show offer was actually a family-friendly fireworks display, so they had to change it up and make it more family-friendly. So they dropped the shit and took up the soup, and they have been Bowling for Soup ever since. So let's jump back a few years before Bowling for Soup was even a thought, and we'll pick up a history with 13-year-old Jaret Reddick, who at the time had grown up in a family that loved music and had been playing all the time. And so he decided to take up the drums. And according to an interview that Jaret did with the Krista Makes podcast, his drumming teacher was actually somebody his parents met in AA. And he had a very Mr. Miyagi style of teaching Jaret the drums. He taught him from the bottom up. In Jaret's words, a very wax-on, wax-off approach to teaching the drums. Which at the time he didn't really fully comprehend because he just wanted to really get started playing. But when the time came to put it all together, it all made sense, and it really made him a very solid drummer. So as a drummer, Jaret was actually not in a punk band, but due to hearing Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train for the first time at the age of 12 or 13, his mind was completely blown and he developed a love for metal music and was part of a metal band called Terminal Seasons, which, knowing what Bowling for Soup would become, it may seem odd to some, but when you really consider Jaret's vocal styles, if he had continued with metal, he very easily could have had a very successful hair metal band, in my personal opinion. And as an important side note, hearing Ozzy for the first time wasn't just influential for his musical style, it was at this point that was actually a musical turning point for Jaret, because upon hearing Crazy Train, he knew at that point in time, music was either going to be a huge part of his life or it was going to be his life. While in Terminal Seasons, purely by fluke of them losing their singer, they got a different drummer and Jaret moved to the vocals and never went back to being the drummer, which was an important piece when looking to the future of the eventual forming of Bowling for Soup, at least in the iteration that we know it. The time had come for Jaret to go to college, which was where he lived, so he didn't need to move away or break with any of the current connections that he had already made over the years. It was at this point in time that there was another pivotal point in Jaret's musical career that would hit. So it's the early 90s, and a friend that Jaret met in college, Greg Shrub Roundtree, lets Jaret listen to Descendants for the very first time. There's a few reasons why this is an integral piece to Bowling for Soup history. Not only are the Descendants an extremely influential band to a lot of punk bands that formed in the 90s, it was this band that inspired Jaret in his songwriting in both song structure and lyrical content. For the first time, Jaret realized that he could write songs about things that he already knew, which was girls and farts and all things that guys have experience with. Also, hearing the Ramones and early Green Day at that time as well had a major influence, which you can hear on early Bowling for Soup recordings. So, at this point, Jaret got a guitar and started writing music after having this major inspiration. So then we get to 1992. Jaret starts a band with Shrub and Lance Morrill, who was the original drummer and Jaret's friend from around the age of 4 years old, and they called themselves Cool Fork. But as fate would have it, while going to college and playing in this band, the stars would align for the members of Bowling for Soup to meet at a coffee shop in their hometown of Wichita Falls called The Refuge. And it was run by none other than their very own guitarist-to-be, Chris Burney. There was a venue here that the longtime lineup of Jaret, Chris, Eric Chandler, and eventually drummer Gary Wiseman would all meet. But at the time, they all played in different bands. But then we come to June 4th, 1994. Bowling for Shit, which would eventually change their name to Bowling for Soup, was officially formed with their original lineup: Jaret, Chris, Eric, and Lance. Gary Wiseman wouldn't actually join the band until 1998, when Lance, on good terms, would leave the band. Jaret was quoted as saying, "We all played there and met and became friends, discovered beer, and the rest is history." And just as Jaret said, the rest is history. And that history we will continue next time when we dive into their debut self-titled record, Bowling for Soup, which was released in 1994, the same year that the band came together. If you like this history, or you were a fan of Bowling for Soup, or you just love music, or you love music history, please remember to like and subscribe. Throw a comment down below. We'd love you to join our community. We do live streams here every Friday, and we'd love to see you there. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you here next time on Critically Disdained.